You are listening to The Mountain Climber and the Sausage Dog, written by D.N. Leo, narrated by Jessica Lee. This story is part of the Happy Novels collection. For more information about The Mountain Climber and the Sausage Dog and related stories in the Happy Novels collection, please go to happynovels.com. Chapter 1. The suppressant sat cold against Petra Stone's wrist. She pressed 2 fingers to the thin metal band and counted to 5. Not because she needed to. The suppressant worked fine. Her wolf was locked down tight, her senses dulled to human normal, her strength dialed back to nothing that would raise eyebrows. The suppressant wasn't the problem. The problem was 14 9-year-olds wearing matching neon green vests, armed with whistles, and absolutely zero sense of self-preservation. "Miss Stone?" A boy with a clipboard, who gave a 9-year-old a clipboard, tugged at her jacket sleeve. Tommy said he saw a bear. "There are no bears on this trail," Petra said. "Tommy said it was a big one." "Tommy also said he could do a backflip off the bus." Petra scanned the group. 13 neon vests at the trailhead, 1 missing. "Where is Tommy now?" "He went to check if the bear was real." "Of course he did." Petra found Tommy 6 meters into the tree line, poking a rotting log with a stick. Bark crumbled. A centipede the length of her finger emerged and scuttled sideways. 3 girls screamed from the trail behind them. "Back to the group," Petra said. "Now!" Tommy dragged his stick behind him like a defeated knight retreating from battle. Petra pinched the bridge of her nose and reminded herself why she was here. Money. The job. Ridgecrest. Dreamer's Cliff. She'd moved to this town 3 weeks ago with a duffel bag, a motorcycle, and a goal she hadn't told a single person about. Peak and Trail Expeditions had 1 opening for a probationary guide. The pay was barely enough to cover rent on her studio apartment above the hardware store. The clientele apparently included packs of feral children whose parents wanted to know if their darlings had what it takes for junior scouts. But the job kept her in Ridgecrest, and Ridgecrest sat at the base of Dreamer's Cliff. Petra pulled her compass from her vest pocket and checked the bearing. North-northwest, matched the GPS on her wrist unit. She tapped the screen twice. Satellite signal strong. Trail map loaded. Waypoints every 200 meters. She checked the backup GPS clipped to her belt. Also good. She checked the emergency beacon in her pack. Green light. 3 navigation devices for a children's nature walk on a marked trail. Excessive by any standard. Essential by hers. "All right," she called. "We follow the red triangle markers. We stay together. We do not poke anything with sticks." "What about pine cones?" Tommy asked. "Especially not pine cones." "What about—" "Tommy, nothing. We poke nothing. We are a no-poking expedition. I will tattoo this on your forehead if necessary." A ripple of giggles went through the group. Tommy looked mildly impressed by the threat. Barry Oakes, the senior guide assigned to evaluate her probation, stood at the back with his arms folded. Mid-50s, permanent sunburn, the kind of outdoors man who measured competence in decades and found everyone under 40 personally offensive. He'd said exactly 9 words to Petra since morning. "Don't lose any of them. I'll be watching." Inspirational. The first hour went fine. Tommy tried to adopt a beetle, lost interest, then convinced 3 other boys that pine cones were grenades. Petra confiscated 11 pine cones, 2 sticks, and something that might have been a dried mushroom or might have been animal droppings. She chose not to investigate. Barry Oakes said nothing. His expression hadn't changed since breakfast. Petra was starting to suspect it was a medical condition. 3/4 through the route, the trail forked. Petra checked her GPS. The screen flickered, refreshed, flickered again. Her stomach tightened. She tapped the screen. The map loaded, pixelated, froze. The compass needle on her wrist unit swung lazily, indecisive, like it had somewhere better to be. The backup GPS showed a different bearing, 12-degree discrepancy. On a children's walk, 12 degrees meant the difference between the picnic clearing and a ravine. Petra's mouth went dry. She kept her face absolutely neutral. 5-minute break, she announced. "Water bottles out. Nobody moves past this fork." The kids scattered like marbles on tile. Tommy immediately found a new stick. Petra was beginning to suspect sticks were magnetically attracted to this child. She stared at the fork. Left or right? The marker should tell her, but the last red triangle was 30 meters back, and neither fork showed one ahead. Overgrown. Faded. Or she was looking at the wrong trees entirely. Her wolf would know. Her wolf always knew. Cardinal directions written into the animal's bones, magnetic north like a drumbeat only the beast could hear. But the suppressant sat cold on her wrist, and her wolf was silent, and Petra Stone, elite mountain climber and certified adventure guide on her third probationary outing, could not tell left from right. "Miss Stone?" Clipboard boy materialized at her elbow. "Are we going left or right?" "I'm assessing the optimal route." "It looks like you're lost." "I am assessing. Those are different words. You have a clipboard. Look it up." A rustle in the undergrowth, low to the ground, fast. Something small and brown, and impossibly long, emerged from the fern line and planted itself directly in the middle of the right-hand fork. A dachshund. Filthy. Burrs matted into its coat. Ears up, alert, dark eyes fixed on Petra with an intensity that had no business being on an animal that was essentially a bread loaf with legs. The dog didn't move. It stood on the right-hand path like a very short, very determined traffic cone. "Ooh, a sausage dog!" A girl with pigtails lunged forward. The dachshund didn't flinch, didn't wag, just held its ground, staring at Petra. Tommy barreled through the group, half a Frankfurter sausage dangling from one fist, hot dog bun in the other. Mustard streaked his chin like war paint. "Can I pet it?" "Nobody touches the dog," Petra said. The dachshund's gaze flicked to Tommy's Frankfurter, then back to Petra. Something shifted in those dark eyes. Assessment, judgment possibly about her career choices. Then it turned and trotted 3 paces down the right fork. Stopped, looked back, this way. The message was as clear as a spoken sentence. Barry Oakes appeared at her shoulder. "Left fork," he said. "Picnic clearing is northwest. Left track follows the ridge." Petra looked at the senior guide, looked at the dog. The dachshund sat on the right-hand path with its chest out and its chin lifted, every centimeter of its ridiculous body radiating professional certainty. Her GPS was frozen, her compass was lying, and a filthy sausage dog was telling her to go right. "We'll split," Petra said. "I'll take half the group right, you take half left. First to the flag wins." Barry's jaw tightened. "That's not protocol. It's a scout assessment. Competition builds character." She gave him her best trustworthy guide smile. 7 kids each. Radio check in 15. Barry took his 7 left. Petra took hers right. The dachshund trotted ahead of her group like a furry expedition leader who'd been running these trails since before any of them learned to walk. 20 minutes later, Petra's group burst into the picnic clearing. The flag stood in the center. Her 7 kids cheered. Tommy did a victory lap that ended with him tripping over a tree root, but he bounced up waving the Frankfurter like an Olympic torch. The dachshund sat at the base of the flag, calm and unsurprised, as if arriving at the correct destination was simply what professionals did. Petra's radio crackled. "Stone," Barry's voice. Tight. "We're backtracking. Trails washed out." 3 kids went down in the mud. Nobody's hurt, but we're 20 minutes behind. Petra keyed the radio. "Copy, we're at the flag. Take your time." She released the button, looked at the dachshund. The dachshund looked at the piece of Frankfurter Tommy had dropped in the grass. Fair enough. When Barry's group finally straggled into the clearing, 7 kids painted in brown mud from the waist down, Barry's jaw locked so tight it could cut glass. Petra caught his eye across the picnic area. He stared at her, stared at the dachshund sitting primly by the flag, stared at her 7 clean, dry, smugly victorious children. Something flickered across his face. He wrote a long note on his clipboard. The dachshund vanished the moment the bus arrived. 1 second it was there, the next, gone, like it had never existed. That night, Petra sat cross-legged on the floor of her studio apartment above the hardware store. The space smelled like sawdust and old paint. A single window faced the tree line. Her maps of Dreamer's Cliff were spread across the floor, the summit route traced in red marker. She'd folded them away before she'd even taken off her boots. Force of habit. A scratch at the window. Petra's eyes opened. The dachshund sat on the narrow ledge outside, silhouetted against the streetlight. It scratched the glass again with one short paw, deliberate, unhurried. The knock of someone arriving for a scheduled appointment. Petra crossed the room and opened the window. The dog jumped inside, shook once, sending dried mud across the floorboards, and sat. Spine straight, ears up, front paws together, perfectly aligned. The posture of someone about to conduct a performance review. Up close, beneath the grime, the coat was a warm reddish-brown, the exact shade of the leftover frankfurter sitting in the takeaway container on her kitchen counter. Same color, same general dimensions if she was being honest. The sausage dog, the actual literal sausage dog. Frank, she said. The name just came out. She was looking at the dog, tasting frankfurter on the back of her tongue from dinner, and the word landed between them like it had always been there. The dachshund tilted his head, considered the name the way a judge considers a closing argument. Frank, he repeated. His voice was low, clipped, and carried the unmistakable cadence of someone who alphabetized his filing cabinet and considered it a hobby. Short, professional, one syllable, projects well across a crowded trail in emergency conditions. He nodded once, approving his own analysis. I accept. Petra sat down hard on the floor. You can talk. I can do considerably more than talk. Frank straightened his already straight posture, which shouldn't have been physically possible but was. I am a Level 3 certified search and rescue tracking specialist. My scent discrimination accuracy is 97.4% under optimal field conditions. I hold navigation certifications in alpine temperate forest. And you have a resume. I have a distinguished career. Frank's left ear twitched. Or I did. The point is, I'm not a stray. I am between positions. You're covered in burrs and you live in a bush. I am between positions with flexible accommodation arrangements. His chin lifted a fraction. There is a significant difference. Is there, though? The framing matters, Petra. She bit the inside of her cheek so hard it nearly bled. How long have you been between positions? 2 years, 4 months, and 11 days. Frank recited it the way someone reads a parking meter. Flat, final. Not that I'm counting. Obviously not. I'm not. I said obviously. Your tone suggested otherwise. My tone is my business. Your tone is everyone's business. It's audible. Frank blinked once. That's how tone works. Silence settled between them. Outside, a nightjar called twice. Frank's gaze drifted to the window. His reflection stared back. Small, unkempt, proud. He looked away first. You were lost today, he said, swapping subjects with the grace of a reversing truck. At the fork, both GPS units failed. Your compass was unreliable. You had 14 children and no functional navigation. His dark eyes locked onto hers. Your spatial orientation is compromised. Don't argue. I could smell the cortisol spike from 40 meters. I wasn't going to argue. You were tensing your jaw. That's pre-argument behavior. You've known me for 6 hours. I'm a fast study. Frank rose, walked to the window, and stared out at the dark tree line. The posture was pure theater, a general surveying the battlefield, if the general was the approximate size and shape of a bread roll in a fur coat. Without my intervention, you would have followed your evaluator down the left fork. The gully floods in anything above 6 millimeters of rainfall. 3 children would have been waist-deep in mud. He paused for effect. Which is, I believe, exactly what happened to the other group. You're enjoying this. I am presenting facts. If the facts happen to support my position, that's not enjoyment. That's evidence. It's gloating. Gloating requires emotional investment. I am merely professionally vindicated. The faintest twitch at the corner of his mouth. Almost a smile. Almost. You need a navigator. I need a handler who possesses the professionalism to listen when someone says, don't take the left fork. The last few words landed different, heavier. Frank's voice didn't change, but something behind his eyes shifted. A door opening half an inch, then closing again. Petra filed it away. And what exactly do you bring to this arrangement? She asked, besides unsolicited opinions and a flair for dramatic window entrances. 97.4% scent accuracy, 4,000 hours of field experience, navigation in conditions where your gadgets are nothing but expensive paperweights. Frank turned from the window. Also, I am excellent company. I've been told I have a calming presence. By whom? By me. Just now. Keep up. Petra's ribs ached from holding in the laugh. "And what do you want in return?" "My title is Navigation and Tracking Specialist. Not pet, not companion animal, not emotional support creature, and not—" the word came out like he'd bitten into something rotten. "Mascot." "Understood. I will also require formal identification reflecting this title, and meal provisions consistent with the caloric demands of professional fieldwork." "So you want a name tag and dinner?" "I want professional recognition and adequate nutrition." Frank stared at her. "They are entirely different things. They are literally the same things. The framing matters. Yeah, I'm getting that." Petra stuck out her hand. "Deal." Frank looked at her outstretched hand, looked at his own paw, looked back at her hand. "The gesture is appreciated," he said, "but the logistics present certain anatomical challenges. My legs are 4 inches long. I'm working with what evolution gave me, and evolution was not generous." He walked over and placed one muddy paw on her knee instead. Firm, deliberate, a handshake adapted for reality. "When do we start?" Frank asked. "Tomorrow, 6 a.m. Petra looked at the mud prints now decorating her floor, her jeans, and most of the space between the window and where they sat. "And Frank, you're getting a bath first." Something rippled across the dachshund's face. Not alarm, not indignation. The expression of a man who has just been informed that the dinner party requires fancy dress. "I'll need 24 hours advance notice for any future hygiene interventions," Frank said stiffly. "You'll get 12. 18. I'll use the good shampoo." "Oh, define good shampoo." "Organic lavender oat milk. The bottle costs more than my dinner." Petra raised an eyebrow. "It's what I use on my hair." Frank stared at her hair, stared at his own coat. Something recalibrated behind his eyes. The expression of a man who has just been offered business class on a flight he expected to spend in cargo. "I'll take the bath now." He trotted toward the bathroom with his chin up and his stubby legs moving at a pace that could only be described as dignified urgency. At the door, he paused and looked back. "For the record, this is not about vanity. A professional must maintain standards appropriate to his station. You've been sleeping in a bush for 2 years, Frank. And now I have lavender oat milk. Things are looking up." The bathroom door nudged shut behind him. 15 minutes later, Frank was curled on the rug beside her bed, his coat a glossy reddish brown that smelled like an expensive day spa, one ear draped over his nose. His paws twitched gently, chasing something kind through a dream only he could see. Petra pulled her phone from her pocket to set the morning alarm. It rang in her hand. The screen showed a number she'd saved 3 weeks ago. Peak and Trail Expeditions, head office. "Miss Stone." The voice belonged to Diane Marsh, operations manager. Clipped, starched, the kind of woman who alphabetized her spice rack and considered it a personality trait. "I'm calling about today's excursion." "All 14 children returned on schedule," Petra said. "No injuries, flag retrieved. 7 of them returned on schedule." A beat of silence sharp enough to cut skin. The other 7 returned 23 minutes late, covered in mud, after being led into a washout gully by the route their supervising guide was not assigned to. Petra's fingers tightened on the phone. "That's not exactly—" "Barry has submitted his observation report. There are concerns." Paper shuffled. "We'd like you to come in tomorrow morning, 8 o'clock, before your next scheduled assignment." "Am I being let go before I even start?" "You're being discussed." Diane's tone didn't soften. It didn't harden either. It existed in a perfect middle ground of corporate non-commitment. 8 o'clock, Miss Stone. Don't be late." The line went dead. Chapter 2. Frank sat outside the Peak and Trail Expeditions office at exactly 7:58 a.m., his freshly washed coat gleaming in the morning sun. He smelled like an expensive day spa and looked like a very small, very serious lawyer waiting for court to open. "Stay here," Petra said. "I'm relevant to the proceedings." 5 minutes. Don't move." "I don't see why I can't." The door closed. Inside, the office smelled like printer toner and someone's microwave oatmeal. Diane Marsh sat behind her desk with a manila folder open in front of her. Barry Oakes occupied the chair by the window, arms folded, expression unchanged from yesterday. From birth, possibly. "Miss Stone, sit down." Diane gestured to the chair opposite her desk. Petra sat. "We've received a report from yesterday's excursion." Diane flipped a page in the folder. Not Barry's observation report. A different form. 3 parents called this morning regarding an unregistered animal on the guided trail. A dog. Loose. Unvaccinated, as far as we know. Interacting with minor children in a supervised outdoor activity. Petra's stomach dropped. Not the route, not the mud, the dog. Pecan Trail has a strict policy regarding animal interactions on guided excursions, Diane continued. Section 4, paragraph 9, no unregistered, unvaccinated, or unidentified animals shall be permitted within the activity zone during client-facing operations. Insurance liability alone. He wasn't interacting with the children, Petra said. He was on the trail. He moved on. The children saw the dog, and they told their parents. Diane's reading glasses caught the overhead light. One parent described her daughter trying to pet it. Another described it sitting beside the destination flag when the group arrived. Barry shifted in his chair. His expression didn't change, but his eyes moved to Petra and stayed there. Diane closed the folder. Here's where we are. Your probation period allows for 1 formal warning before termination. This is your warning. The animal interaction is a policy violation. Going forward, no animals, no strays, no pets, no wildlife engagement beyond approved curriculum. If that dog appears on one of your tours again, your position is terminated. Understood? Petra's jaw tightened. And if I need a tracking dog for navigation support? We don't use tracking dogs. We use GPS. Diane's smile was the corporate equivalent of a closed door. You're a qualified guide, Miss Stone. You don't need a dog. The words sat in the air between them like a dare. Petra thought about the 12-degree GPS discrepancy, the frozen compass, the left fork that led to a mud bath. She thought about 14 children whose safety had depended on a dachshund she'd met 6 hours earlier. She thought about Frank, sitting outside in the sun, smelling like lavender oat milk, waiting to hear if he had a job. I appreciate the opportunity, Petra said. She stood. But I'll have to decline. Diane blinked. Barry's arms uncrossed for the first time in recorded history. You're declining the probation extension, Diane said slowly. I'm declining the terms. Petra tucked the chair back under the desk. Thank you for your time. She walked out before either of them could respond. Frank was exactly where she'd left him, spine straight, paws aligned, sitting in a patch of sunlight like a small monument to professional patience. His ears rotated toward her the moment the door opened. He read it in her face before she said a word. They fired you, Frank said. I quit. You quit. His ears flattened slightly. Your probationary position, your income, your reason for being in this town. They said I could stay if I got rid of you. Petra crouched to his level. They prefer the GPS to a professional trail tracker. Their loss. Frank didn't speak for a moment. His dark eyes searched her face with an intensity that had nothing to do with professional assessment. His tail moved, not a wag exactly, a tremor, the involuntary response of something that had forgotten what it felt like to be chosen. He cleared his throat. That was a strategically questionable decision. Probably. Financially irresponsible. Almost certainly. And entirely unnecessary. I would have understood if you'd... Frank. Yes? Shut up and say thank you. Another tremor in the tail. Shutting up now, and thank you. He straightened his posture, rebuilt his composure brick by brick. Now, regarding our sudden unemployment, I may have a solution. He trotted to the notice board mounted on the wall outside the office. Community postings, lost cat flyers, a yoga class nobody attended, and a laminated card that read, Emotional Support Alpaca. Available for weddings, funerals, and tax audits. Will not bite, probably. Call Brenda. Frank stared at it. This town has lower professional standards than I anticipated, he said, which works in our favor. He stretched up on his hind legs and pressed his nose to a printed flyer near the bottom corner. Ridgeline Adventures. Next town over. 22 minutes by car. He tapped the flyer with one paw. They run multi-day treks, corporate retreats, and private guided tours. And look, third line from the bottom. Petra leaned in. Guide dogs and registered trail animals welcome with documentation. They allow trail dogs, Petra said. They encourage trail dogs. Different companies have different insurance models. Ridgeline operates on the adventure tourism framework, which classifies working animals as safety equipment, not liability. Frank dropped back to all fours. I did some research. When? Last night, before the bath. Your laptop was open. You used my laptop. You left it on the kitchen counter. That's practically an invitation. Frank was already trotting toward her motorcycle parked at the curb. We should go now. Morning interviews convey enthusiasm. Also, I have nothing else scheduled. The motorcycle was a problem, not the speed. Frank had no issues with speed. Speed was efficient. Speed got you from point A to point B in the minimum viable time frame. Speed was, in Frank's professional opinion, an entirely rational mode of transportation. The basket was the problem. Petra had strapped a wicker carrier to the back of her motorcycle, the kind designed for small dogs, lined with a fleece pad, secured with 2 bungee cords and a carabiner, perfectly safe, practical, and mounted approximately 3 feet off the ground. Frank stood beside the motorcycle and stared up at the basket. No, he said. It's the only way to get there. I'll walk. It's 22 minutes by car. That's approximately 4 hours by dachshund. I'll leave now and meet you after lunch. Frank, get in the basket. The structural integrity of that wicker is, it holds 15 kilos, you weigh 6. My concerns are not weight-related. Frank circled the motorcycle once, inspecting the basket from every angle. His body was perfectly calm. His eyes were performing rapid altitude calculations. The attachment points are adequate. They're rated for mountain biking. And the fleece lining? Machine washable. That's not what I... He stopped, regrouped, drew himself up to his full 8 inches of height. Fine, but I want it on record that I'm entering this basket under professional obligation, not personal enthusiasm. Recorded. And if I require a moment of quiet reflection during the journey, that is not fear. It is mindfulness. Mindfulness? Got it. And the lavender shampoo smell is not a comfort mechanism. It's a residual grooming outcome. Frank, basket, now. He jumped. It took 2 attempts. The first landed him on the seat. The second got him into the basket. He circled once, sat down and faced forward with the rigid composure of a ship's captain who has just been informed he'll be making the crossing in a dinghy. Petra kicked the engine to life. The motorcycle rumbled. Frank's ears flattened against his skull. Mindfulness, he whispered. They hit the main road. Wind whipped past them. Frank's ears streamed behind him like 2 brown flags. His eyes were wide open, locked on the road ahead, his whole body vibrating with something he would later describe as heightened situational awareness, and Petra would describe as absolutely losing it. At the first curve, Frank's paws gripped the rim of the basket. At the second curve, his claws dug into the fleece lining. By the third curve, he was pressed flat against the bottom of the basket with his nose pointed at the sky, experiencing what could only be called aggressive mindfulness. "You okay back there?" Petra called over the wind. "Outstanding," Frank shouted. "The aerodynamics of this basket are entirely acceptable. You're lying flat." "I'm reducing drag. It's a physics decision." They pulled into the Ridgeline Adventures parking lot 12 minutes later. Frank remained in the basket for an additional 30 seconds, composing himself. When he finally stepped out, his legs were steady, his chin was up, and his coat was blown into a style that made him look like a dachshund who had just survived a Category 3 cyclone and was prepared to file a formal complaint about it. "Never speak of this," Frank said. "I'm going to speak of this constantly. I expected nothing less." He shook once, resettled his fur with tremendous dignity, and trotted toward the office entrance. "Let's get this job." Chapter 3. Ridgeline Adventures operated out of a converted ranger station at the edge of the state forest. Timber walls, wide windows overlooking the trail network, topographic maps pinned to every available surface. The air smelled like coffee and pine resin. The manager was a woman named Kath, early 40s, sunburned forearms, hiking boots that had seen actual hiking. She took one look at Frank trotting through her door and grinned. "Oh, you brought a trail dog." Kath crouched to Frank's level. "Hey there, little mate. What's your name?" Frank sat, paws together, chin up, expression neutral. He did not speak, because Frank had decided that talking dachshunds were a private matter between him and Petra, and the general public was not ready for the information. "This is Frank," Petra said. "He's my navigation and tracking specialist." "Specialist?" Kath raised an eyebrow. "That's a big title for a little bloke." Frank blinked once, slowly, the blink of a man who has been underestimated before and has a policy of letting results speak for themselves. "Does he have papers?" Kath asked. "Vaccination records, working dog registration, that sort of thing?" "I adopted him recently," Petra said. "He's still being processed, but he's fully trained. Scent tracking, trail navigation, hazard detection. He's remarkably good." Kath scratched behind Frank's ears. Frank permitted this with the tolerance of a CEO enduring a team-building exercise. His tail did not wag. His professional standards were clear. "No worries, I'll sort it out later. Give me a paw print." Kath pulled an electronic pad from her desk drawer and set it on the floor. "What's that?" Petra asked. "Just like a fingerprint, but for working dogs. New technology. If we're lucky, he's already in the system. If not, I'll register him fresh, and you'll never run into the same problem again." Petra looked at Frank. He sat perfectly still, but something flickered behind his dark eyes. A calculation running at speed. If he was in the system, and like her, he might have secrets, then what would happen to him? But before she could object, he pressed his right paw onto the pad. Firm, deliberate, the same way he'd placed his paw on Petra's knee the night before. Whatever came up, came up. "Good lad," Kath said, and put the pad away. "And you, Petra?" Kath settled back behind her desk. "Your CV says Alpine certification, search and rescue training, 5 years of guided tours across 3 states. That's a lot of mountain for someone who ended up at a kid's scout program." "Peak and trail was a stepping stone," Petra said. "I'm looking for something more serious." "Why'd you leave?" "They had a policy against working animals." Kath's eyebrows climbed higher. "You quit a job over the dog?" "I quit a job over a bad policy." Petra met her eyes. "Frank found the correct trail when my GPS failed yesterday. The senior guide took the other path and got 3 kids stuck in mud. If I'd followed protocol instead of following the dog, I'd have been the one filing incident reports." Kath leaned back in her chair. Her eyes moved between Petra and Frank. Frank sat motionless, radiating the quiet competence of someone who had absolutely nothing to prove and knew it. "Can he do a trail demo?" Kath asked. "Quick loop behind the station. There's a marked route with 3 flags. If he can find all 3, you're hired. Both of you." Petra looked at Frank. Frank looked at the door to the trail. One ear rotated toward it like a satellite dish locking onto a signal. The demo took 11 minutes. Frank found the first flag in 90 seconds, pinned to a tree fork, masked by eucalyptus oil that would have confused a lesser nose. The second flag, buried under leaf litter at the base of a boulder, took him 4 minutes of systematic scent work, his body low, his paws precise, every movement controlled and purposeful. The third flag was hidden in a hollow log. Frank located it, sat beside it, and looked back at Kath with the expression of someone waiting for a slower colleague to catch up. Kath hired them on the spot. "Private guided tours mostly," Kath said, walking them back through the office. She handed Petra a schedule printout. "Families, couples, small groups. You set the route, Frank works the trail, everyone goes home happy." She grinned at the dachshund. "Welcome aboard, specialist." Frank dipped his chin precisely 2 centimeters. A nod. Professional. Measured. He maintained this composure through the office, through the parking lot, all the way to the motorcycle. The moment they were alone, his tail erupted. Not a wag, an event. His entire back half swung side to side with a force that should have been structurally impossible for an animal his size. His ears bounced. His paws did a tiny, rapid shuffle on the gravel, the dachshund equivalent of a victory dance performed by someone who would deny it ever happened. "Navigation and tracking specialist," Frank said. "She called me specialist, in a professional setting, in front of witnesses." "She did. That's official. That's practically a title card. Do you think she'd put it on a lanyard? Lanyards convey authority. I'll ask about the lanyard. With lamination. Lamination is non-negotiable." His tail was still going. His entire body was vibrating with a frequency that suggested structural failure was imminent. "Do you think they do business cards?" Small ones, paw-sized, with embossing. Frank? Yes? Get in the basket. Frank eyed the wicker carrier. His tail was still going. The basket and I have reached an understanding, he announced. It provides transportation. I provide dignified silence regarding its structural shortcomings. He jumped in, one attempt this time, and sat facing forward. Also, can we take the curve slower? The aerodynamic assessment was less favorable than initially reported. You afraid of heights, Frank? No, they tend to disagree with me. I'm afraid of nothing. His chin lifted into the wind. Drive, Petra. We have a career to rebuild. They spent the afternoon at home. Petra reviewed the tour schedule while Frank conducted what he called a comprehensive operational audit of the apartment, which mostly involved sniffing every corner, declaring the kitchen ventilation substandard, and attempting to reorganize the shoe rack by scent profile. Frank, those are sorted by color. Color is not a functional system. Scent tells you when each pair was last worn, the terrain it encountered, and whether the left shoe has a developing moisture issue. He nudged a hiking boot to the left with his nose. This one does, by the way. Noted. You're welcome. The first assignment was tomorrow morning. A small family, parents and 2 kids, booked for a half-day private forest tour. Easy terrain, marked trails, the kind of job designed to let a new guide find her footing. Straightforward, Petra said, studying the route map on her phone. 3-hour loop, elevation change negligible. We could do this in our sleep. I don't do anything in my sleep, Frank said from the kitchen, where he was inspecting the underside of the refrigerator with forensic intensity. Sleep is for recovery. Work is for consciousness. Mixing the two leads to operational errors. It's an expression, Frank. It's a sloppy one. He emerged from under the fridge, whiskers dusty. But yes, tomorrow should be manageable. A useful calibration exercise for our first collaborative field operation. He paused. I'll need the good shampoo again tonight. First impressions are critical, and I refuse to meet our inaugural clients smelling like refrigerator dust. You crawled under there voluntarily. In the line of duty. The dust was already present. I merely documented it. Petra scratched behind his ear. He permitted it for exactly 3 seconds before stepping away. The tolerance threshold of a professional accepting a compliment. The afternoon light shifted gold through the window. Petra's phone buzzed with the confirmation email from Ridgeline Adventures. New guide, new trail dog. First assignment, 9 a.m. Frank settled by the window, his nose resting on the sill, watching the street below with the relaxed vigilance of someone who was, for the first time in over 2 years, exactly where he was supposed to be. Then his ears snapped forward. Petra looked up from her phone. Frank's body had gone rigid. Not the stiff formality of his professional posture, something different, something alert and animal and old. His eyes tracked 2 figures crossing the street toward the Ridgeline Adventures office down the block. Men, heavy set, walking with the kind of deliberate purpose that didn't match the easy pace of the town. Frank? Those 2. His voice was low, flat, the comedy stripped clean out of it. They just entered the agency. Petra moved to the window. She caught a glimpse of the second man's back disappearing through the office door. Broad shoulders, dark jacket, nothing overtly wrong, nothing she could point to. Might be clients, Petra said. Might be. Frank's nose twitched. His ears hadn't relaxed. They don't smell like hikers. We're 3 blocks away. You can smell them from here? I can smell the boot polish from here, and the metal. He paused. People who hike don't polish their boots, and they don't carry that much metal. Petra watched the office door. Closed now. Ordinary. A converted ranger station at the edge of a small town where nothing ever happened. It's probably nothing, she said. This is a human business. Human town. If there's trouble, there's human police for that. It's not pack business. Frank said nothing. It's not our problem, Frank. His ears stayed forward, his nose stayed on the sill, his eyes didn't leave the door. First day tomorrow, Petra said, pulling the curtain half closed. Early start. We should eat, sleep, and stop borrowing trouble. Frank dropped from the sill and trotted toward his food bowl, with the measured calm of a professional who had filed his concerns and would revisit them at the appropriate time. But his ears didn't relax, not once. Chapter 4. The Morrison family arrived at 9 a.m. sharp. Dad in cargo shorts and brand new hiking boots that had never touched dirt. Mum with a camera bag worth more than Petra's motorcycle. 2 kids, a girl around 7 and a boy around 10, both vibrating with the kind of energy that suggested someone had made the catastrophic error of allowing pancakes for breakfast. "We'd like as much autonomy as possible," Dad said, adjusting his sunglasses. "We're experienced bushwalkers. We just need someone to point us in the right direction and let us explore." Petra glanced at his boots. The price tag was still attached to the left one. "Absolutely," she said. "Frank and I will stay close. You set the pace." Frank sat at her heel, freshly shampooed, coat gleaming, posture immaculate. He looked like a very small concierge at a very expensive hotel who was about to inform you that your room wasn't ready and he wasn't sorry. The girl crouched in front of him immediately. "Can I pat him?" Petra looked at Frank. He sat motionless, chin elevated, eyes forward. The tolerance of a professional who understood that client relations were part of the job, even the undignified parts. "He's working," Petra said, "but a quick pat won't hurt." The girl stroked his ear. Frank held still with the composure of a man enduring a cavity search at airport security. The boy crouched beside his sister. "He's really long." Frank blinked. "Like a hot dog," the boy added. Frank's left ear twitched. Just once. Petra recognized that twitch. She'd seen it once before, when she'd named him while eating a frankfurter. The twitch of a dignified professional choosing, with tremendous restraint, not to commit violence. "His name is Frank," Petra said quickly. "He's our navigation and tracking specialist." "Cool," the boy said. "Does he do tricks?" Frank's gaze slid to Petra. She didn't need to speak dachshund to translate. "If that child asks me to roll over, I am resigning effective immediately." "He finds things," Petra said. "That's his trick." They hit the trail at 9:15. The bush track wound through dense eucalyptus forest, the canopy so thick the morning light came through in green-gold slats. Cicadas hummed. A kookaburra called from somewhere overhead, and the girls shrieked with delight. Frank trotted ahead, nose working the trail, ears rotating like 2 independent satellite dishes. He paused every 30 meters to check the path, sniffing, assessing, then moving on with the brisk efficiency of someone ticking items off a checklist only he could see. Petra watched him work. His rhythm was hypnotic. Trot, pause, sniff, assess, move. Machine-like in its consistency, except machines didn't have ears that could independently track 2 different sounds while maintaining a facial expression of supreme professional boredom. 20 minutes in, Frank slowed. His tail dropped a fraction. He circled back to Petra's ankle. Casual to anyone watching, deliberate to her. "We have a problem," he murmured, low enough that only she could hear. Petra's hand drifted to the radio on her belt. "What kind?" "The boot polish kind. 2 sets of tracks, fresh, paralleling our trail about 40 meters east." His voice had gone flat. The comedy filed away in a locked drawer. "They're flanking us." Petra's jaw tightened. She scanned the tree line. Nothing visible. Nothing audible over the cicadas and the kids arguing about whether a stick was a snake. "It's not a snake," the boy announced, holding it up. "Put the stick down," Petra and Frank said simultaneously. The boy dropped the stick. Petra filed away the comedy of synchronized stick commands for later and focused on the tree line. "Could be other hikers," she said quietly. "Other hikers don't flank. They walk. These 2 are maintaining a fixed distance and adjusting pace to match ours." Frank's ears hadn't moved from their forward lock. "I've been tracking them since the 2nd kilometer marker." "Why didn't you say something sooner? I was hoping I was wrong." His nose twitched. "I'm not wrong." Petra's hand tightened on the radio. She could call Kath, but backup was 20 minutes away on a dirt road, and whatever was in those trees was 40 meters away right now. "We keep moving," she said. "Stay close to the family. Don't spook them." "Petra," Frank's voice dropped a register. "They're not interested in us." The words took a second to land. She looked at the children. The girl was collecting leaves. The boy was attempting to climb a tree with the confidence of someone who had never experienced gravity's opinion on the matter. "The kids," Petra whispered. Frank dipped his chin once. the smallest nod. Something cold settled in Petra's chest. Not fear, older than fear. The wolf underneath the suppressant pressed against the band on her wrist like a fist against a window. "New plan," she said, pitching her voice to casual. "Hey, Morrison family, slight change. Trail ahead gets a bit technical, so I'm going to ask everyone to stick close together. Kids between the adults, please." Dad nodded. Mum gathered the girl. The boy protested briefly about his tree, then rejoined the group. They walked. Frank stayed at the rear now, his body low, his ears locked forward. Every 30 seconds, Petra glanced back at him. Still tracking, still locked on. Then the trail opened into a clearing, and the boy spotted the cliff. It rose from the edge of the bush like a broken wall, 40 meters of gray rock face, scraggly vegetation clinging to ledges, a narrow goat path winding up one side. Not Dreamer's Cliff, a smaller formation, but steep enough, high enough, and remote enough that Petra's stomach clenched at the sight. "Cool!" The boy was already moving. "Stay with the group," Petra called. A branch cracked in the tree line, close, too close. Frank's whole body snapped toward the sound. Petra had never seen him move that fast. Every muscle locked, nose up, ears pinned, the professional composure blown clean off like a hat in a gale. Everything happened in the next 8 seconds. 2 men broke from the trees, heavy set, dark jackets, the same build, the same deliberate stride Petra had seen from her apartment window yesterday. One moved toward the parents, the other angled toward the children. Mum screamed. Dad grabbed both kids and ran, not toward the trail, not toward Petra, but toward the cliff. Instinct. The animal brain choosing height over distance. He hauled them up the goat path, Mum scrambling behind, and they disappeared around a rock ledge 15 meters up. The first man followed. Petra moved. She hit the goat path at a sprint, boots finding holds on loose shale, arms pumping. The second man lunged for her. She ducked under his arm, planted her shoulder into his ribs, and kept climbing. He stumbled backward. 3 seconds bought. "Frank, stay down!" she shouted. She didn't look back. Couldn't afford to. But she heard his claws skid on gravel below, a sound like someone trying to start running and stopping themselves at the same time. The goat path narrowed to a ledge barely wide enough for single file. The Morrison family was pressed against the rock wall. Dad shielding the kids, Mum white-faced, the girl crying quietly into her mother's jacket. Petra reached them in 40 seconds. Her lungs burned. Shale rattled down the cliff face behind her boots. "There's a cave!" she gasped, pointing to a dark opening 3 meters above the ledge. "Get in, all of you, now!" Dad didn't argue. He boosted the kids, helped Mum, and Petra hauled herself up last. She turned to face the path. The first man appeared around the bend. Broad chest, heavy breathing, eyes locked on the cave. Petra grabbed the boulder she'd spotted on the ledge. Sandstone, watermelon-sized, balanced on the lip of the cave entrance. She braced her legs and shoved. The boulder tumbled, hit the goat path, and triggered a cascade of loose rock that poured across the narrow section like a curtain falling. The man threw himself backward. The rock fall filled the path. Not permanently, not dangerously, but enough. A wall of loose stone and dust between him and the cave. Petra yanked the radio from her belt. "Kath, this is Petra. Emergency. Morrison Trail, Eastern Cliff Face. 2 men pursuing a family with children. Family is safe in a cave at the 15-meter ledge. I need police now." Static. Then Kath, sharp and fast. "Copy. Police dispatched. 20 minutes. Can you hold?" "We can hold." Petra watched dust settle over the blocked path. No movement from the other side. "They're not getting through this way. Stay put. Help is coming." Petra clipped the radio to her belt. The Morrison family huddled at the back of the shallow cave. The girl had stopped crying. The boy stared at Petra with eyes the size of saucers. "That was awesome," he whispered. "That was Tuesday," Petra said. "Sit tight." She moved to the cave mouth and looked down. The second man paced at the base of the cliff. The first was still on the far side of the rockfall, testing footholds. The police were 20 minutes out. The rockfall might hold 15. They needed to move. Petra looked up. A narrow chimney of rock led to a ridge trail above the cave, a route that wound back down through the bush to safety. She could see the holds, the angles, the places where rock was solid and where it would crumble. She could climb it, easily. She could not, for the life of her, figure out which way to go once she reached the top. The ridge split 3 ways. Her GPS showed the same frozen screen it had shown yesterday, the satellite signal bouncing uselessly off the cliff face. One trail led to safety, the other 2 led to nowhere. And Petra Stone, elite mountain climber with a condition she'd never told anyone about, could not tell the difference. She needed Frank. Frank, who was 40 meters below. Frank, whose entire body had locked up the moment the cliff entered his field of vision. Petra leaned out of the cave. She could see the base of the cliff, the second man still pacing, and a small brown shape sitting absolutely motionless near the tree line. Even from this height, she could read his body. Rigid, locked, paws planted like they'd been cemented to the ground. "Frank!" she shouted. The brown shape didn't move. "I need you up here. I can get them out, but I can't navigate the ridge. I need your nose." Nothing. Frank sat at the base of the cliff like a small brown statue, a monument to reasonable fear. Petra's chest tightened. She couldn't make him climb. She wouldn't. He'd earned the right to say no to cliffs for the rest of his... A sound drifted up from below, faint, indignant, carried on the updraft like a complaint filed with the wind itself. Terrible idea. Catastrophically, historically, epically terrible idea. Want that on record. Petra's breath caught. Filing a grievance. Job description did not mention vertical rock faces. This is a contract violation. Louder now. Closer. The voice bouncing off the stone in fragments, punctuated by the tiny scrape of claws finding holds. 37 inches. That is 37 inches higher than I have been in 2 years. 4 months and 11 days. Not that I'm counting. The Morrison boy pressed beside Petra at the cave mouth, eyes wide. "Is that the dog?" "That's the dog," Petra said. Her throat was thick. "Burrows!" Frank's voice echoed up the cliff face, shaking with effort and outrage in equal measure. "Dachshunds were bred for burrows, underground, where gravity is a non-issue. The breeders who designed this body did not consult an engineer, and if they did, that engineer should be disbarred." The girl squeezed beside her brother. "Is he okay?" "He's complaining," Petra said. "That means he's fine." "Left paw solid, right paw, nope, loose, avoid." "Who puts loose shale at this angle? That's negligent. I'm adding it to the grievance." Higher. Closer. Petra could hear his breathing now. Fast, sharp, the panting of a 6-kilo animal hauling himself up a vertical surface designed for creatures with significantly longer legs and significantly less self-respect. "And the lavender shampoo is completely ruined, Petra. Dust in my coat, grit between my pads." This is a grooming emergency, on top of a safety violation, on top of a contractual breach. A paw appeared over the lip of the cave entrance, brown, dusty, trembling slightly. Then an ear, flat against the skull. Then a long, dust-coated, thoroughly outraged dachshund hauled himself into the cave, collapsed on the stone floor, and lay there with all 4 legs splayed like a very small, very furry crime scene. "The hot dog!" the girl shrieked. Frank's head lifted an inch off the stone. His eyes, wild, exhausted, blazing, found the girl. His mouth opened, closed, opened again. "His name," Frank said to Petra through clenched teeth, "is Frank." Petra dropped to her knees beside him. His whole body was trembling. Dust coated every inch of his coat. His claws were scraped raw, and his eyes were the eyes of someone who had just walked through the worst memory of his life and come out the other side vertical. "You made it," she said. "I made it." He dragged himself upright, shook once. Bits of cliff fell off him. "And I would like it noted that I did not enjoy a single second of that experience. Not one. It was horrible. The rock was horrible. The height was horrible. My legs are 4 inches long, Petra. 4 inches. That cliff is 40 meters. Do you understand the ratio? That's like you climbing a building using nothing but spite and stubbornness." "That's basically how I climb everything." "I know. I can smell the stubbornness. It has a scent. It smells like motorcycle exhaust and bad decisions." He stood fully now, legs wobbling, chin rising, the professional composure reassembling itself over the wreckage like scaffolding going up around a bombed building. Now, you need my nose, because your GPS is useless and you can't tell left from right up here." He said it without judgment, without cruelty. Just a fact, stated by a professional to his partner. "Ridge trail," Petra said. "3 forks. I need to know which one gets us back." Frank pointed his nose toward the chimney above the cave. His nostrils flared. 3 seconds. 5. "Left fork. Eucalyptus and open air. That's your descent route to the main trail. Middle fork is stagnant water and dead leaves. Goes nowhere. Right fork is deep rock and old rain. Pushes into the ranges." He looked at her. "Left. Go left. I'll confirm as we climb." "You're sure?" "Petra, I just climbed 40 meters of cliff face on 4-inch legs with no harness, no rope, and absolutely no emotional support whatsoever. My nose is the one thing about this situation I am entirely confident in." "Copy that, specialist." Something flickered across his face, the faintest crack in the armor. Not a smile. Frank didn't smile, but the ghost of what a smile might look like on a dachshund who had just remembered that his title still meant something. They climbed. Frank rode in the backpack this time, pressed against Petra's spine, murmuring directions into her shoulder blade. Left hand, 1/2 meter up. Solid hold. Right foot, 1/4 meter lateral. Skip the dark patch. Moisture compromise. Dad carried the girl. Mom helped the boy. The chimney was narrow but manageable, and Frank's nose guided them hold by hold, step by step, over the ridge and onto a trail that wound gently down through the bush. The descent took 25 minutes. Frank navigated every meter. Bearing northwest, 300 meters to the main trail junction. His voice had steadied, the trembling gone, the professional cadence restored. "Creek crossing ahead, shallow, ankle depth. The children should be carried, not for safety reasons, for efficiency. Small legs are slow legs." He paused. "I say this with professional solidarity." The girl giggled from her father's arms. 200 meters, trail widens, gravel surface. Frank's nose worked. "I can smell the ranger station, and someone's made a fresh pot of coffee. Medium dark roast, possibly single origin. There's a hint of caramel in the finish." "You can identify a coffee roast from 200 meters?" Petra said. "I can identify the farm from 200 meters. The roast is just showing off." His ears finally relaxed from their forward lock. "We're almost home." They emerged from the tree line into the Ridgeline Adventures parking lot at 11:47 a.m. 2 police cars sat in the lot, lights off. Kath stood by the office door, radio in hand, her whole body sagging with relief when she saw them. The Morrison family collapsed onto a bench. Mom held both kids so tight they squeaked. Dad sat with his head in his hands, the price tag on his boot finally ripped off. By the cliff, not by choice. The girl looked up from her mother's arms. "The hot dog saved us," she announced. "His name is Frank," the boy corrected. "He's a specialist." The police took statements. 2 officers hiked up to the cave and found both men still trapped behind the rockfall, sitting on opposite sides of the blocked path, looking significantly less intimidating than they had 2 hours earlier. The senior constable radioed down what he described as the most embarrassing tactical failure I've seen in 15 years of policing. The Morrison family refused to leave without thanking Frank. Dad crouched to Frank's level. "Mate," he said, "I don't know how to say this. You climbed that cliff. You found us a way down. My kids are safe because of you." Frank sat with impeccable posture and let the man scratch his ears. No wag, no performance. But he held steady, and he let himself be touched. And from where Petra stood, she could see his tail trembling, the same involuntary tremor she'd seen when she'd chosen him over the job at Peak and Trail. The tremor of something that had forgotten what it felt like to matter. Mom took a photo of the kids with Frank. The girl kissed the top of his head. Frank endured this with only minor eyelid twitching, which Petra considered remarkable restraint, given his documented feelings about unsolicited physical contact. "We'll be writing a review," Dad said to Petra. 5 stars, minimum. 6 if the platform allows it, Mom added. Kath watched the family drive away, then turned to Petra and Frank with an expression Petra couldn't quite read, admiration and something else, something careful. "That," Kath said, was the most impressive rescue I've seen from a guide team in this district. Police are calling it textbook. The family's calling it heroic. And the constable said, your dog found a descent route that isn't on any of our trail maps. Frank's chin lifted a fraction. Petra could feel the pride radiating off him like heat from a small, furry furnace. Which brings me to a problem. Kath's voice shifted. Not angry, not cold, measured. The paw print came back. The pride vanished. Frank went still beside Petra's ankle. His registered name is Franz, assigned handler, Marcus Webb. Kath held a tablet, screen facing her. Level 3 search and rescue tracking dog, 4,000 hours logged. There's an incident report attached. Mountain Safety Board found that the tracking dog failed to adequately communicate hazard warnings prior to the handler's fatal climb. Petra's blood went cold. She looked down at Frank. He hadn't moved, hadn't flinched. He stood at her ankle with his ears flat and his eyes on the floor. That's not possible, Petra said. That's what the record says, Petra. Kath's voice was careful, not unkind. We're allowed to use trail tracking dogs. Unfortunately, not one with an active safety finding against him. Insurance won't cover. Frank just climbed 40 meters of cliff face on 4-inch legs to save a family he'd never met. The words came out harder than Petra intended. Now I understand why he's afraid of heights. The death of his handler was tragic. But did anybody first stop to ask about the well-being of the animal who witnessed that fall? Or did they just need someone to blame? Kath's mouth opened. Because I've watched this dog work for 2 days. His nose is flawless. His judgment is flawless. He reads terrain better than any GPS I've ever carried. A dog like that doesn't fail to communicate a hazard. A dog like that communicates, and somebody doesn't listen. Silence. The coffee maker gurgled. Outside, a kookaburra called, and nobody laughed back. Petra, Kath said quietly, it's what the record says. Then the record is wrong. Petra reached down to put her hand on Frank's back. Her hand found empty air. The spot beside her ankle was bare. No click of claws on the floor. No rustle of fur against her boot. Frank had slipped away without a sound. No protest. No rebuttal. No impassioned speech about his 97.4% accuracy rate. He hadn't even tried to tell his side. Petra scanned the office, the parking lot through the window, the trail entrance. Gone. Because that's what Frank did. He was a professional. He took responsibility, even for things that weren't his fault. Even when the report was wrong and the blame was misplaced, and the entire world had decided that a dachshund with 4-inch legs should have somehow stopped a grown man from climbing a cliff, he'd been warned not to climb. Frank hadn't argued 2 years ago. He hadn't corrected the record. He hadn't filed his own report or demanded that someone, anyone, listen to what actually happened on that mountain. He'd walked into the bush and stayed there. 2 years, 4 months, 11 days, sleeping rough, living on scraps, carrying a verdict he didn't deserve with the same rigid, silent dignity he carried everything else. And the moment his past caught up, he did the only thing he knew how to do. He left. Petra pushed through the office door and stood in the parking lot. Late afternoon light slanted gold across the gravel. The motorcycle sat where she'd parked it. The basket was empty. She didn't know the full story, didn't know the details of the climb, the exact moment of the fall, the precise words Frank had used to warn a handler who didn't listen. She didn't need to. She'd seen him work. She'd heard him call out hazards with the precision of someone whose entire identity was built on being right when it mattered most. Whatever that report said, it was wrong. And whatever it had cost him, his name, his title, his home, his belief that doing the right thing counted for anything at all, she was not going to let it cost him 1 day more. She grabbed her helmet, kicked the motorcycle to life, and went to find her dog. Chapter 5. Petra found him at the old trailhead. Of course he was at the old trailhead. The place where strays waited and nobody came. The place where a dachshund with a distinguished career and a wrongful verdict had spent 2 years pretending he didn't need anyone. He was sitting under the same fern where she'd first seen him, the spot where he'd blocked her path and saved her from the left fork. His coat was still gray with cliff dust. His ears were flat, his chin rested on his front paws, and he was staring at nothing with the focused blankness of someone who had decided with professional finality that he was done. Petra killed the motorcycle engine. The silence was enormous. She walked to the fern and sat down on the dirt beside him. Not in front of him, not crouching to his level for a pep talk, just beside him, close enough that her knee touched his back. Frank didn't move. "You left without saying goodbye," Petra said. "Nothing." "That's unprofessional, Frank. Very off-brand." His ear twitched, the smallest reflex, then flat again. "I'm not going to pretend I know exactly what happened on that cliff with Marcus," Petra said. She kept her voice steady, conversational, the way you talk to someone who has heard too many speeches and needs something real instead. "I don't know the details. I don't know what you said to him or how many times you said it, but I know you. I've known you for 2 days, and I know you better than that report does." Frank's jaw tightened against his paws. "You read terrain like other dogs read dinner bowls. You called every hazard on that cliff today, every loose hold, every moisture patch, every angle. You guided a family of 4 down a route that isn't on any map while riding in a backpack on the spine of a woman who can't tell north from Tuesday." She paused. "That's not a dog who fails to communicate. That's a dog who communicates so well it's actually a little annoying." Frank's tail moved. Not a wag, a flinch, like something had tried to respond and he'd shut it down. "The report is wrong," Petra said, "and we're going to fix it." "You can't fix it." Frank's voice was small, hoarse, the voice of someone who had said those words to himself 1,000 times in the dark. "I tried. After Marcus fell, I tried to tell them. Nobody listens to a dog, Petra. Not officially, not on paper. The board needed a cause. The handler was experienced, the equipment was sound, the weather was clear. The only variable left was me." His eyes closed. "So I became the variable." "Did you warn him?" 3 times. The words cracked. "I told him the north face was unstable. I told him the anchor points wouldn't hold above the second pitch. I told him the rock smelled wrong, calcium deposits leaching, microfractures in the granite. I told him." His paws curled against the dirt. "He patted my head and said, 'That's why I've got the rope, mate.'" Petra's chest ached so hard she could feel it in her teeth. "He was the best handler I ever had," Frank whispered. "The best person I ever knew. And he didn't listen, and I couldn't stop him. And when the rock gave way, I was 50 feet below, watching, and I couldn't—" He stopped, swallowed. "I couldn't reach him." The bush was quiet. Late afternoon light filtered through the canopy in soft gold columns. A bellbird called once, clear and sharp, then fell silent. "I'm sorry," Petra said. "It wasn't your fault." "I'm sorry anyway." Frank opened his eyes. They were wet. Dachshunds weren't supposed to cry. It wasn't in the breed specifications. But Frank's eyes were wet and bright, and full of 2 years of grief that had never been allowed a professional outlet. "I sat at the base of that cliff for 6 hours," he said, "after the rescue team came, after they took Marcus. I sat there until dark because I didn't know where else to go. And the next morning, the report came out, and suddenly I was the dog who didn't do his job, the dog who let his handler die." His chin dropped back to his paws. "So I left. Because staying meant hearing it every day from people who weren't there, and leaving meant I could at least be wrong in peace." Petra sat with him in the dirt and the fading light and let the silence hold what words couldn't. Then she pulled her phone from her pocket. "The Morrisons called Kath," she said. Frank didn't respond. "Apparently Mr. Morrison, the one with the price tag on his boot, is a district court judge." Frank's ear lifted, just a fraction. "And Mrs. Morrison sits on the board of the Regional Emergency Services Authority, the same authority that oversees the Mountain Safety Board." Both ears now, rotating toward her like satellite dishes acquiring a signal. They've filed a formal request for a review of Incident Report number 2847, the finding against tracking dog Franz, assigned handler Marcus Webb. Petra scrolled through the message on her phone. Judge Morrison has also submitted a personal testimony describing the actions of said tracking dog during a life-threatening rescue on the eastern cliff face today. He used the words extraordinary, heroic, and— She squinted at the screen. "Better at his job than most humans I've sentenced." Frank's head lifted off his paws. His wet eyes were wide. The board has agreed to an expedited review, Petra said. Given the new testimony and the circumstances of today's rescue, Kath says the finding will be formally retracted within the week. Silence. Your record will be cleared, Frank. Your name, your real name, Franz, whatever you want to go by, will be restored. No more active finding, no more safety violation, no more insurance exclusion. She put the phone down. You're not the dog who failed, you never were, and now it's going to be official. Frank stared at her. For the first time since she'd known him, Frank had nothing to say. His tail started first, a tremor, then a sway, then a full, uncontrolled, structurally inadvisable wag that engaged his entire back half and most of his spine. His ears bounced. His paws did the tiny rapid shuffle on the dirt, the same victory dance from the Ridgeline parking lot. Except this time his eyes were wet, and his legs were shaking, and there was nothing professional about any of it. I'm going to need a moment, Frank said. His voice cracked on the last word. Take your time. This is not emotional. This is a physiological response to... Frank, it's okay to be happy. I'm not happy, He stopped. His tail was still going. His whole body was still going. Fine. I'm happy. I'm happy, and I'm dusty, and I smell like Cliff, and I want the lavender shampoo, and I want my record cleared, and I want... His voice wobbled dangerously. I want to go home. Petra's throat closed. Then let's go home. She reached down. Frank placed his paw on her knee, the same deliberate gesture from their first night when he'd accepted her handshake on his own anatomical terms. Firm, steady. Petra? Yeah? Thank you. No qualifiers, no deflection, no professional framing or elaborate vocabulary. Just the word. Laid bare. From a dog who had spent 2 years believing he didn't deserve to say it. They rode home in the last light. Frank sat upright in the basket this time. No lying flat, no aggressive mindfulness, no claims about reducing drag, just a small brown dog with his chin in the wind and his ears streaming behind him and his eyes open to the world. At the second curve, Petra heard him mutter, "Still hate this basket." At the third curve, she heard quieter, "But it's growing on me." The bath took 45 minutes. Petra used the entire bottle of lavender oat milk shampoo. Frank stood in the tub with his eyes closed and his chin tilted up, and the expression of a diplomat receiving a long overdue apology from a foreign government. "We need to discuss our professional future," Frank said, as Petra rinsed the last of the cliff dust from his ears. "I was thinking about that. Kath offered to keep us on, provisional status, pending the board review. She did." Petra wrapped him in a towel. He looked like a small, disgruntled burrito. "I turned her down." Frank's eyes snapped open. "You what?" "I quit. Again." Petra set him on the bathroom floor and crouched to his level. "I'm done negotiating for your place, Frank. With Peak and Trail, with Ridgeline, with anyone. Every time we walk into someone else's company, you have to prove you belong. You have to submit paw prints and pass demos and hope their insurance model has room for a dachshund." Frank's expression shifted, cautious, hopeful, the face of someone who could see where this was going but didn't dare say it first. "So here's what I'm thinking." Petra sat on the bathroom floor. Wet knees, shampoo in her hair, towel-wrapped dachshund, staring at her with the intensity of a man about to receive a promotion. "We go freelance, our own company. Clients hire us directly, the pair of us, as a unit. No one approves or disapproves of your role because you are the role. Equal partners." Frank didn't blink. "Equal partners. 50-50, Stone and Frank expeditions." She paused. "Or Frank and Stone. We can negotiate the billing order. Stone and Frank it is. I'm flexible on the billing." Petra laughed. The sound bounced off the bathroom tiles, and Frank's ears perked at it. A reflex, like a dog hearing a frequency he'd forgotten existed. "Equal partners," Petra said. "I climb, you navigate. We take the jobs we want. We answer to nobody. Will there be lanyards? Custom lanyards. Laminated? Double laminated. Business cards? Paw-sized, with embossing." Frank's tail started going under the towel. The burrito vibrated. "And a website," he added, "with a professional headshot. Not one of those ridiculous pet photos with a bow tie. A serious headshot. Corporate lighting, neutral background." I'll book a photographer. And a tagline, something authoritative. Stone and Frank, we find the way. He paused, reconsidered. Stone and Frank, your GPS wishes it were this good. We'll workshop the tagline. It's important, Petra. Taglines establish brand identity. I know. First impressions are formed in 7 seconds. A tagline accounts for 3 of those seconds. The other 4 are my posture. He drew himself up inside the towel, which, as you know, is impeccable. Petra stuck out her hand. Frank looked at it, looked at his paw, looked back at her hand. We really need to find a better way to do this, he said. He placed his paw on her knee. Firm, deliberate, the handshake of equal partners, adapted for anatomical reality. Stone and Frank Expeditions, Petra said. Operational as of tomorrow, Frank confirmed. I'll draft the business plan tonight. Of course you will. It will be thorough. I'd expect nothing less. There will be spreadsheets. Good night, Frank. He circled twice on the rug beside her bed. The same rug, the same spot. But he looked different tonight. Cleaner, obviously, but something else. The rigidity had softened. The professional armor was still there, polished and present. But the creature underneath it had stopped bracing for impact. Petra lay in bed and stared at the ceiling. Outside the window, the mountain waited. Dreamer's Cliff. The reason she'd come to this town, the goal she still hadn't told Frank about. A conversation for another day, a secret that would test everything they'd built. But not tonight. Tonight was for the win. Petra? Frank's voice drifted up from the rug, sleepy, soft. The professional register dialed down to something almost gentle. Yeah? I need to tell you something. A pause. About the next phase of our partnership. We haven't even launched the website, Frank. This is more important than the website. Another pause, longer this time. When I was in the bush, during the 2 years, I had a lot of time to think. About Marcus, about the cliff, about what went wrong and why. And I made certain. Negotiations. Petra rolled onto her side. Negotiations with whom? With the upstairs department. The upstairs department. Management, the cosmos. Whoever handles the complaint box for unjust career terminations. Frank's tail thumped once against the rug. I filed a formal grievance regarding the 2 years of my life that were wrongfully taken. I outlined the damages, loss of professional standing, emotional distress, substandard nutrition, and the ongoing indignity of sleeping under a fern. Petra's lips pressed together. And what was the resolution? Compensation. I haven't claimed it before. I've been saving it, but I claimed it just now. Frank's voice carried the satisfaction of a man who had won an arbitration. I asked for something for you. The ceiling suddenly required very careful study. For me. You need a mate, Petra. What? A fated mate. A proper one. I specified. Tall, competent, no criminal record, and absolutely 0 problems with heights. Someone who can keep up with you on a cliff face and keep up with me in a conversation, which is a significantly higher bar. Frank, you can't just negotiate a mate. It's done. His tail thumped again. Petra sat up in bed. You're telling me that you, a dachshund, filed a complaint with the universe, and the universe agreed to send me a fated mate? He yawned. It pretty much sums it up. The details of his arrival are pending, but I've been informed it will be. Dramatic. Dramatic how? He's going to fall on you. He's going to what? Literally. On you. Onto your lap. Specifically, if the coordinates are correct. Frank tucked his nose under his tail. I requested someone with no fear of heights, so naturally the delivery method involves falling from one. The universe has a sense of humor. I do not appreciate it, but I respect the commitment to theme. Petra stared at the dachshund curling up on her rug. His eyes were closing. His breathing was evening out. His tail gave one final, satisfied thump. Who is he? Petra asked. Story of another day, Frank murmured. Go to sleep, Petra. Frank. You can't just order me a boyfriend from the cosmos. I didn't order a boyfriend. I negotiated a fated mate. There's a significant difference. One eye opened. The framing matters, Petra. He closed the eye. His breathing deepened. Within 30 seconds, his paws were twitching, chasing something through a dream. Something good this time. Petra could tell by the way his tail swayed, slow and easy, like a metronome keeping time with a song only he could hear. She lay back down and stared at the ceiling. A fated mate, falling from a height, onto her lap, and that is the mountain climber and the sausage dog. If you are wondering what happens next, Frank is not done. Not even close. He shows up in Falling for You, where Petra meets the man Frank literally negotiated out of the sky. A fated mate with no fear of heights, a jawline that should be illegal, and absolutely no idea that a 6-kilo dachshund is about to run a background check on his entire life. And Frank returns again in This Is How to Fall. Same attitude, same 4-inch legs, same strong opinions about lanyards, shampoo, and the structural integrity of wicker baskets. If you loved Frank today, he only gets better from here. Now, if you want to experience this story and every story in the Happy Novels collection completely ad-free, join us at the Silver level at happynovels.com. Silver members get ad-free listening, access to the full library of similar stories like this for free, and you will never miss a new release. No interruptions, no chasing links, just the stories, the way they were meant to be heard. happynovels.com. Come find your next favorite. If you enjoyed the story, please like, comment, and subscribe. Tell me in the comments, what was your favorite Frank moment? I read every single one, and your feedback shapes the stories we tell next. Got a sidekick idea? A trope you are craving? Drop it below. Your suggestion might just become the next story. Thank you for listening. I am Deanne Leo. Until next time, stay cool and watch out for falling alphas.